Right now, while you are sitting here, something is happening inside your arteries that most doctors never have time to explain. A slow, silent buildup. Plaque stacking against your arterial walls like rust forming inside an old pipe. You cannot feel it. You have no idea it is happening. And here's the part that genuinely shocked me when I first learned it. The meal you ate this morning, it either slowed that process down or it sped it up. There is no neutral. Every single bite you take is a vote. A vote for more plaque or less. And most people are voting the wrong way without knowing it. I want to tell you about something that happened in my office a few years ago. A patient came in. Let us call her Sandra. She was 67 years old, retired postal worker from Virginia, spent decades on her feet, staying active, eating what she thought was healthy. Her doctor had her on medication for her thyroid, and she had started noticing that her energy was crashing in the afternoons. Her legs felt heavy, and her most recent blood work had her cardiologist concerned about her LDL. He was talking about adding another prescription. Sandra sat across from me and said something I have heard dozens of times. She said, "I feel like I am doing everything right, so why is my body falling apart?" Let me answer that question today. Because Sandra was not doing anything wrong. She was following advice that was designed for a different kind of patient. The advice your doctor gives you in a 7-minute appointment was never calibrated for someone over 60 with specific arterial concerns. It was designed for the average patient, and you are not average. You are watching this video at this moment because something is not working, and that tells me everything I need to know about you. Before I go any further, I need to be clear about something. Everything I am sharing today is based on published research and decades of clinical experience. This is not a replacement for your doctor's care. It is information that fills the gaps your doctor does not have time to fill. Bring what you learn here to your next appointment. A good physician will welcome that conversation. Now, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Type your country in the comments. I read every single one. And if you are over 60 and dealing with high cholesterol, arterial stiffness, or cardiovascular concerns, type YES right now. Because this video was made for you. Here is what most people get wrong about arterial plaque. They think of it like something that builds up gradually and uniformly, like sediment settling at the bottom of a glass. That is not what happens. Your arteries have an inner lining called the endothelium. Think of it like the inside of a garden hose. When it is healthy, it is smooth, slightly flexible, and blood flows through it with almost no resistance. But when you have chronic inflammation, when oxidative stress is constantly battering that lining, it starts to get rough, sticky. And that is when plaque begins to form. Not because there is too much cholesterol floating around, but because there is a damaged surface for it to stick to. Now here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part I want you to pay close attention to. Not all plaque behaves the same way. There is calcified plaque, hard, stable, set like concrete over many years. And then there is soft plaque, unstable, like a blister inside your artery wall. That soft plaque can rupture without warning. And when it ruptures, it can throw a clot. That clot is what causes a heart attack, not the plaque sitting there quietly, the rupture. So the real goal is not just stopping new plaque from forming. It is making the soft plaque you already have more stable, less likely to blow. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The food on your plate tonight has a direct, measurable effect on that stability. Johns Hopkins University researchers studying cardiovascular risk have confirmed what I have seen in practice for years. Dietary patterns alter the inflammatory environment inside arterial walls. The right foods do not just stop the damage. They begin to shift the conditions that allow dangerous plaque to exist. Sandra, by the way, had never heard any of this. Her cardiologist had given her a pamphlet about reducing saturated fat. A pamphlet. After 30 years of accumulating arterial damage. I am not blaming her cardiologist. He had 7 minutes. This information takes longer than 7 minutes. So let me show you the plate that actually moves the needle. 6 ingredients. Each one on this plate has a specific job inside your arterial wall. And at the end of this video, I am going to reveal the one ingredient that surprises most of my patients when I show it to them. It is not what you think. And I am going to save it for last because once you understand the mechanism behind it, it will make complete sense. Let us start with the foundation, wild salmon. Now, I know, you have heard this before. Omega-3 fatty acids, heart healthy. Yes. But I want to show you why this works at a level most explanations skip. Salmon contains a specific omega-3 fatty acid called EPA. And EPA does not just float around in your bloodstream doing general good things. It actually gets incorporated into the walls of soft, unstable plaque. Once it is inside that plaque, it changes its physical structure, makes it more stable, significantly less likely to rupture. A 2019 analysis published in the New England Journal of Medicine examined a large-scale trial called REDIS-IT, looking at high-risk cardiovascular patients. The group receiving concentrated EPA supplementation saw a 25% reduction in major cardiovascular events compared to the placebo group. 25%. Let me say that again. 25% reduction in heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular death. Now that trial used pharmaceutical-grade EPA at high doses. But the mechanism, the EPA stabilizing soft plaque from the inside, that is the same mechanism activated by eating wild-caught salmon 2 to 3 times per week. Wild-caught matters, not farm-raised. Wild salmon runs significantly higher in EPA than farmed varieties because of what the fish eat in their natural environment. You can grill it, bake it, pan-sear it in olive oil. The preparation matters less than the frequency. 2 servings per week, minimum. Sandra started there. Week 1. Now I need to be upfront about something. If you are currently taking blood thinners like warfarin, or if you are already on a prescription fish oil supplement, adding a lot more EPA through food can amplify the blood thinning effect. Not dangerous in typical quantities, but worth mentioning to your doctor. This is especially important if you bruise easily or notice unusual bleeding. Bring it up at your next visit. The conversation is worth having. Next ingredient, and this one surprises people with how powerful it actually is. Leafy greens, dark ones, spinach, arugula, Swiss chard, not for the fiber, not for the vitamins, for something called dietary nitrates. Here is how this works. Your body takes those dietary nitrates from the greens and converts them into nitric oxide. And nitric oxide might be the single most important signaling molecule your cardiovascular system produces. When nitric oxide is present in your arteries, your arterial walls relax. They widen. Blood pressure drops. And that rough, sticky endothelium I described a moment ago begins to heal. It becomes smooth again. When nitric oxide is depleted, the opposite happens. Arteries stiffen, blood pressure climbs, and that damaged surface stays damaged. Think of your arteries like a garden hose left in the sun for 20 years. The rubber gets stiff, brittle, less flexible. Nitric oxide is what keeps the hose soft. And dietary nitrates from leafy greens are the most efficient way to flood your system with the raw material for nitric oxide production. A study published in the journal Hypertension found that dietary nitrate supplementation from vegetables reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury in hypertensive subjects. That does not sound like a lot, but consider this. Every millimeter of systolic pressure reduction reduces cardiovascular risk by roughly 2 to 3%. Do the math. Consistent leafy green consumption adds up to meaningful protection over time. Make the greens the base of your meal, not the garnish. A big handful, raw or lightly sautéed in a little olive oil. Do not overcook them. High heat destroys some of the nitrates, and pair them with what comes next. Extra virgin olive oil. Now I need you to hear the words extra virgin, because this distinction is not marketing, it is chemistry. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal. And oleocanthal does something remarkable. It inhibits the same inflammatory enzyme that ibuprofen blocks, the CAX enzyme. Same mechanism, different delivery. Every tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil you use is quietly reducing the inflammation inside your arterial walls, the inflammation that made those walls rough and sticky in the first place. But it gets better. The PREDIMED trial, one of the largest cardiovascular nutrition studies ever conducted, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Researchers followed over 7,000 high-risk cardiovascular patients across Spain for nearly 5 years. The group eating a Mediterranean diet with abundant extra virgin olive oil had a 30% lower rate of major cardiovascular events compared to a low-fat control group. 30% from food. Now I need to be crystal clear about olive oil. Buy cold-pressed, extra virgin, in a dark bottle with a harvest date on the label, ideally from a single estate, stored away from heat and light. The compounds that make it cardioprotective are fragile. They degrade with heat, light, and time. That bulk olive oil in a clear plastic jug? You are paying for something that may have lost most of what makes it worth buying. Use it for your dressing. Use it in your pan on medium-low heat. That is where it shines. Sandra started combining her salmon with a large bed of arugula and spinach, dressed with extra virgin olive oil, fresh lemon, and crushed raw garlic. That last part, the garlic. This is where the explanation gets genuinely interesting. Raw garlic. Not garlic powder, not cooked garlic, raw. And here's the reason timing and preparation matter so much. When you crush or finely chop a raw garlic clove, an enzymatic reaction begins. The align inside the garlic converts into allicin. That sharp, pungent bite you smell, that is allicin activating. And allicin does 3 specific things inside your cardiovascular system. First, it reduces inflammation in the arterial walls, works on the same underlying mechanism as the olive oil from a slightly different biochemical angle. Double coverage. Second, it acts as a natural antiplatelet agent. Your blood cells become less likely to clump together and form clots. Remember what I explained earlier. Soft plaque ruptures, clot forms, heart attack happens. Allicin makes that final step significantly harder to trigger. Third, multiple randomized controlled trials examining aged garlic extract have found evidence suggesting it may slow new plaque accumulation. And in some early stage cases, early research indicates a possible modest reversal. Now here's the critical part about preparation. That allicin activation? It only works if you crush or chop the garlic and then let it sit for 5 minutes before it touches heat. If you drop a whole raw clove into a hot pan, you kill the allicin before it forms. The 5-minute window is not optional. Crush it, set it aside. Use that 5 minutes to prepare your other ingredients. Then add it raw to your dressing, or let it sit and add it at the very end of cooking over very low heat. The most effective method by far is mixing it cold into your olive oil and lemon dressing, raw, and pouring it over your plate right before you eat. 1 clove, maybe 2, every day. Sandra made this a non-negotiable. And she told me later that within about 3 weeks, she noticed something she had not expected. Her legs felt less heavy in the afternoon. She thought it was coincidence. I told her it probably was not. If you are taking blood thinners, this is important. Raw garlic in large amounts can amplify anticoagulant effects. 1 to 2 cloves in your food is unlikely to be an issue for most people. But if you are on warfarin or another anticoagulant, mention this to your doctor. They may want to monitor your INR more frequently. Now I want to come back to Sandra for a moment, because in week 3, something happened that she did not expect. Her afternoon energy crashes. They were getting better. She had more clarity in the mornings. And her leg heaviness had noticeably improved. She had not changed her thyroid medication. She had not changed her exercise routine. She had added salmon twice a week, greens every day, extra virgin olive oil, raw garlic in her dressing. Week 4, she called my office. Her at-home blood pressure readings were consistently lower. Not dramatically, but consistently. She wanted to know if she should stop taking the medication. I said no, absolutely not. Never change your medication without your prescribing doctor's direct guidance. What I told her instead was to bring her readings to her cardiologist and let him decide. And he did. 3 months later, after consistent labs, he began discussing the possibility of a dose adjustment. That is how this works. Food is not a replacement for medicine when medicine is necessary. It is the missing layer of the conversation. Now I am taking you toward the last 2 ingredients. And the final one, I promised you, is the one that surprises people most. It is not the salmon. It is not the garlic. It is something you may have walked past 100 times in the grocery store without giving it a second thought. But before I get there, I want to ask you something. If what you are hearing right now is genuinely new to you, if nobody has ever explained how EPA stabilizes soft plaque, or how nitric oxide from greens changes arterial wall flexibility, if your doctor has never had time to walk you through any of this, hit like on this video right now, not for the algorithm. Because every time someone engages with this content, the platform shows it to someone else who needs it. Someone whose doctor also only has 7 minutes. You are helping them get an education they would not otherwise receive. Back to the plate. Berries and pomegranate. On the side. Either one. Or both. And here is exactly why they are on this plate rather than simply labeled as healthy snacks. Berries and pomegranate are extraordinarily dense in polyphenols, specifically a category called anthocyanins. And anthocyanins attack something called oxidative stress. Let me explain oxidative stress in a way that makes it stick. Think of it as cellular rust. The same chemical process that turns iron orange and brittle over time is happening inside your body at a cellular level, inside your arterial lining specifically. That rust is what damages the endothelium, makes it rough, turns it into a surface where plaque wants to stick. Polyphenols are rust inhibitors. They neutralize the oxidative damage before it degrades your arterial lining. But here is the specific mechanism that most people miss. Polyphenols do not just prevent oxidative stress in general. They specifically reduce the oxidation of LDL cholesterol. And this is crucial. LDL cholesterol on its own is not the primary villain here. It is oxidized LDL. LDL that has been damaged by free radicals. Oxidized LDL is what triggers the immune response that leads to plaque formation. So if you reduce LDL oxidation, you reduce the initiating step of the entire process I have been walking you through. Early human studies on pomegranate juice, including research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, suggest that regular consumption may improve endothelial function and reduce arterial stiffness over time. The data is still emerging. I am not overstating it, but the direction is genuinely promising. A handful of mixed berries, fresh or frozen, both work equally well, or half a cup of pomegranate seeds alongside your main plate. That is the combination Sandra added in week 2. Now, the last ingredient, the one I promised at the beginning, the one that raises eyebrows almost every time I show it to someone, ground flax seeds. Let me explain why this is on the plate and why most people completely underestimate it. Flax seeds are one of the richest plant-based sources of a type of soluble fiber called mucilage. And here is what mucilage does inside your digestive tract that directly impacts your arteries. When soluble fiber comes into contact with bile and digestive fluid in your intestine, it forms a thick, viscous gel. That gel binds to LDL cholesterol particles before they can be reabsorbed into your bloodstream. It literally traps them, and then eliminates them from your body. Think of it like a sponge that intercepts harmful cholesterol before it ever gets a chance to reach your arterial walls. Less circulating LDL means less available to oxidize. Less oxidized LDL means less of the initiating trigger for plaque formation. This is why soluble fiber has been a cornerstone of cardiovascular recommendations for decades, and flax seeds deliver it in one of the most concentrated, inexpensive, and versatile forms available. But flax seeds offer 2 additional benefits that make them particularly valuable. First, they contain alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. It works through a slightly different pathway than the EPA from salmon, but it contributes to the same anti-inflammatory environment inside your arterial walls. Double protection on the omega-3 front. Second, flax seeds contain compounds called lignans. Lignans are phytoestrogens with strong antioxidant properties. For women over 60 especially, lignans appear to offer additional cardiovascular protection. Several studies suggest they may reduce markers of arterial inflammation specifically. Now here is the critical rule with flax seeds. And get this wrong and you get none of the benefit. They must be ground. Whole flax seeds pass through your digestive system almost entirely intact. Your body cannot break through the outer shell. You get nothing from whole flax seeds. Ground flax seeds, on the other hand, are immediately bioavailable. Buy them pre-ground in a sealed dark package and store them in your refrigerator. Or buy them whole and grind them yourself in a small coffee grinder. Fresh ground is marginally more potent, but both work well. 1 tablespoon sprinkled over your plate right before eating. You will not taste it. It blends into whatever you put it on. But over weeks and months, your blood work will begin to reflect what is happening. Sandra started adding ground flax seeds in week 3, 1 tablespoon over her salad. Her total cost for all 6 ingredients combined came to roughly $4 a day. $4 a day. And at her 4-month follow-up appointment, her cardiologist noted something he described as unexpectedly positive movement in her lipid panel. Her oxidized LDL markers had shifted. Her inflammatory markers had come down. He asked her what she had changed. She handed him a printed list of 6 ingredients. He looked at it for a long moment, and then he said, "Honestly, this is consistent with the literature. I just never have time to get into this level of detail. 7 minutes. That is the average length of a primary care appointment in the United States. 7 minutes to address everything. That is not a failure of individual physicians. It is a structural failure. The system was not designed to provide dietary education at the cellular level. That is what this video is for. Now, I want to be honest with you about expectations, because the worst thing I can do is let you build this plate tomorrow and then quit after a week because you did not feel different immediately. Here is the realistic timeline based on what I have seen. Week 1 and 2. You may not notice anything dramatic. That is completely normal. The changes happening are biochemical, not symptomatic. You are changing the inflammatory environment inside your arterial walls. That process does not announce itself. Stick with it. Week 3 and 4. Some people, not all, begin noticing energy improvements. Afternoon energy being slightly more consistent. This is often related to the nitric oxide effect from the greens improving blood flow. Again, not everyone experiences this. Individual responses vary significantly. Month 2. This is when blood work often begins to reflect the dietary shift. Inflammatory markers, LDL particle quality, arterial flexibility metrics if your doctor measures them. Bring your doctor along on this journey. Share your protocol with them. Month 3 and beyond. This is where Sandra saw her most significant changes. Consistent, cumulative shifts. The kind that make a cardiologist look at a chart and say, unexpectedly positive movement. Most people quit after 1 week. They do not feel different. They think it is not working. But they are wrong. The changes are happening below the threshold of sensation. Biochemistry works quietly. The whole point is that it is quiet. You do not feel arteries getting better. You see it in a lab result 3 months from now. If you quit after a week, you never get to see that result. And here is the objection I hear most often. This sounds like a lot of food to add to my diet. What if I do not like salmon? What if I cannot afford organic greens? Let me address that directly. Frozen wild salmon is significantly less expensive than fresh and nutritionally equivalent. Frozen berries, same thing. Ground flax seeds cost almost nothing per serving. Canned sardines and mackerel deliver the same EPA as salmon at a fraction of the cost. This plate is not a luxury. Sandra built it on a postal worker's retirement income. If she could do it, I am confident you can too. Now here is something I need to address. The foods that quietly undo all of this work. And this is important because you can eat this entire plate every night and still be fighting an uphill battle if these 3 things are in your daily rotation. Flavored yogurt. I know it sounds healthy. The packaging says live cultures, heart health, protein. But turn the container over and read the sugar content. Most flavored yogurts contain as much added sugar as a dessert. Buy plain full-fat Greek yogurt. Add your own berries. Add a small drizzle of honey if you need sweetness. You control the sugar content. Breakfast bars and granola labeled as heart healthy. The marketing is so effective that I have had patients eating 3 of these a day and wondering why their blood sugar keeps spiking. Most of them are sugar and refined grains in a wrapper with a picture of a heart on it. The label says heart healthy because they contain some oats. The label does not mention the 20 grams of added sugar. Read ingredients. If sugar or one of its many names appears in the first 3 ingredients, put it back. And the sneaky one, juice. Even the kind that says 100% natural. No added sugar. Orange juice, apple juice, grape juice. The fiber is removed during processing. The natural sugars that would normally be slowed in their absorption by the fiber of the whole fruit are now delivered in one concentrated liquid dose. Your blood sugar spikes. Your insulin responds. That repeated insulin spike over months and years contributes to the inflammatory state inside your arterial walls. An apple is medicine. Apple juice is sugar water with good marketing. If you want the benefit of fruit, eat the fruit. These are not small additions of damage. Eaten every day, consistently, they maintain the very inflammatory environment that your 6-ingredient plate is trying to calm down. You cannot outheat a bad daily habit with one good meal, but you can absolutely replace these 3 things and feel the difference. Let me bring Sandra's story full circle, because this is the part that matters most to me personally, not the numbers, the person. At her 6-month follow-up, her cardiologist had revised the conversation entirely. No new prescription. The existing one was being discussed for possible reduction. Her inflammatory markers were down. Her lipid panel had shifted in a clinically meaningful direction. But more than the blood work, Sandra told me this. She said, "I can walk my whole neighborhood again without my legs feeling like concrete. I thought that was just aging. I thought I had to accept it." She was not wrong to think that. She had been told, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, that these changes were just what getting older felt like. That the declining energy, the heavy legs, the blood pressure creeping up, these were the natural trajectory of a body past 60. Nobody had ever sat down and connected those symptoms to the inflammatory state of her arterial walls. Nobody had connected them to what she was eating. And nobody had explained that at 67, the right plate of food could begin to shift that trajectory. You are not broken. I want you to hear that clearly. The body you have right now is responding to decades of input it was never given the tools to process optimally. That is not a personal failure. That is an information failure. And today, you are correcting that. Here is what you know, now that most people watching YouTube videos on heart health will never understand. You know that soft, unstable plaque is the real cardiovascular danger, not hard calcified plaque. You know that EPA from wild salmon gets incorporated directly into plaque walls and stabilizes them from the inside. You know that leafy greens provide dietary nitrates that your body converts into nitric oxide, the molecule that keeps arterial walls flexible and blood flowing freely. You know that extra virgin olive oil inhibits the same inflammatory enzyme as ibuprofen, applied quietly every day at your table. You know that raw garlic, crushed and rested for 5 minutes, produces allicin that reduces platelet stickiness and arterial inflammation simultaneously. You know that the polyphenols in berries and pomegranate neutralize the oxidative stress that damages arterial lining and initiates LDL oxidation. And you know that ground flax seeds bind LDL cholesterol in your digestive tract before it ever reaches your bloodstream. 6 ingredients, 1 plate, each one doing a specific job that your cardiologist would explain to you if the appointment lasted longer than 7 minutes. Now let me be honest about one more thing, because I have seen what happens when people watch a video like this, feel motivated, and then think that this one meal fixes everything. It does not. Sandra did not move from arterial concern to positive blood work on 6 ingredients alone. She also got serious about sleep. She worked with me on her stress patterns. She addressed a morning habit that was quietly spiking her blood sugar before she even ate her first meal. The food is the foundation. It is not the whole house. The whole picture requires looking at everything your body experiences every day. But the foundation matters enormously. And you have that foundation now. Tonight, you can begin. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. 1 plate. Wild salmon or sardines if salmon is not your preference. Arugula and spinach as the base. Extra virgin olive oil and lemon with 1 crushed garlic clove, rested 5 minutes, mixed in cold. A handful of frozen berries on the side. 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds sprinkled over everything right before you eat. That is your starting point. If this video gave you something you did not have before, if you learned one mechanism today that actually made sense of something your doctor has never had time to explain, I want to ask you to do something. Type the words "I finish it" in the comments right now. And then, not tomorrow, today, share this video with one person. Your spouse, your sibling, your parent. Someone who is dealing with high cholesterol, arterial stiffness, heart health concerns. Someone who is eating the way Sandra was eating before she walked into my office. This information is not complex. It is just not getting to the people who need it. You can change that. In next week's video, I am going to reveal something that I held back today. Something most cardiologists do not discuss in a standard appointment. A morning habit that most people over 60 are doing before they even eat breakfast that is actively damaging their endothelial lining. The research is genuinely alarming, and the fix takes about 45 seconds. I will see you there. Do not let anyone tell you it is too late, because it is not.